Hi, hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Julia, and this is the place where I talk about art, books, and museums. However, honestly, I just don't have enough time to talk about museums and art, and it's been a while since I published any other video than the bookish content, which is, it's fine by me because this way I contain my mental health in a good condition. However, I understand that probably you have some expectations. I promise I will make some things about, let's say, art and probably museums, especially when I travel to South Korea, where there is a splendid museum scene. And but so far, let's just talk about books because still we enjoy them and they're very useful while visiting other cultures and other museums, isn't it? And this video is also going to be a compilation of two types of bookish content. It's going to be a wrap-up of my August books and my TBR for September, because honestly, I just don't have enough time to make two separate videos, so I just decided to dump everything in one, and yeah, I hope that's fine by you. So I divide all the video in different parts, so it will be convenient for you if you want to skip, for example, wrap-up video. I want to jump right into my TBR. It's your choice, of course. Please do that. However, I would love to begin with the books that I've read last month. It was 5 books. I was planning to finish 2 never finished books. One is the biography of Viktor Tsoi, and another one is Im Westen nichts Neues, All Quiet on the Western Front, I believe it's called in English. Still didn't finish them. I think I don't have time to sit with a book and just think about it and read it thoroughly, because those 2 books require really a lot of attention. Whilst the books that I read this month were quite enjoyable and easy reads for me. And yeah, let's talk about them. First book I finished last month was Flawless: Lessons in Looks and Culture from K-Beauty Capital by Elise Hu. Well, that is a wonderful piece of non-fictional literature. I really enjoy that. It actually kind of changed my perception of K-beauty, because I believe, I don't know why, I don't know where I got that idea, that their beauty standards are based on the European beauty standards. Yeah, indeed, that is a wrong myth about K-beauty that Elise Hu busted for me, because now I understand that their beauty standards are actually rooted in their own ancient culture. It's okay to be confused, and I believe that a lot of people believe that beauty standards in Asia most of the times are based on the beauty standards in Europe. For example, their skin tone or skin color, it is better to be white, because it is believed that if you have white skin, it means that you are not standing in this hot sun and not working on the ground, I don't know, so you're not peasant, you're probably a noble person. And of course, this and many other things Elise Hu describes in this book. And so yeah, Elise Hu has done a great job in educating me personally in understanding their perception of beauty, which still, I don't think we should pursue them like any beauty standards. I think we should accept who we are. Of course, this book didn't convince me that I should, meet their standards of beauty and change everything in my looks. No, on the contrary, I think Elise Hu has done a great job, not just revealing the history behind the beauty standards in Asia, but also criticizing it a little bit and trying to find out what people there actually think about them. So I think it is a great work of non-fiction and journalistic research, and yeah, I would recommend it to everybody, especially if you're interested in that part of the world. So yeah, this is the first book that I read and that I enjoyed very much. The next one was Susan Clarke and her work Piranesi. So well, that is an interesting one. First of all expectations were met. I'm utterly joyful that I read this book. However, I have to admit, the first 50 pages, I think, were a struggle. First of all, I'm not accustomed to fantasy literature. I think I never read any of them. I think the most fantasy book ever I've read is The Wizard of Oz, and that's it. So for me to get accustomed to some sort of fantasy or fantastic world is complicated. However, Susan Clarke has done a great job in making it easy, let's say. She describes it in very accessible words. So she didn't build like very complicated world with different layers of, I don't know, politics and different social groups that were combined in like one utopian world or whatever. So she built a very simple world, let's say. But oh boy, she put such an interesting story inside this little world. And so after 50 pages, when you got used to the storytelling manner and to the world itself, you kind of like get used to the main character, who is called Piranesi by one of the other characters in this book. And then your curiosity is ignited and you are interested in what's going to happen to Piranesi and what is going on there. I really enjoyed that Susan Clarke employed a little bit of transcendental philosophy inside this book. So basically we are puzzled with this idea of like what is our knowledge, what is our memory, and how we can transcend it. And I think this is her, let's say, literary attempt to do that. But of course, with that transcendency, let's say, comes a lot of problems and a lot of conundrums. And I think this is such a great job. It is very elegant, very simple. So it's not like a hefty long book. It's quite compact, but yet it consists of great food for thought, let's say. So I would recommend it if you are up to some, a little bit of philosophy, but also if you're up for a little mystery, I think you can go for it. So if you found this book in the fantasy section of your bookstore, don't be perplexed. I think because it takes place in this fantasy world, or let's say fantastic world, I'm not sure it actually can be considered as a fantasy. I'm not sure really. I do believe that this deserves its own category, something like a philosophical novel. So this is my recommendation to you. I think it is a great book, and I might consider it as one of the best books of this year, but I need to think about it. And this is actually one of the cases when I read it, of course, I know what happened there, but I actually was thinking maybe I should reread it. Maybe I can rediscover it once again. So I rarely have this feeling. I usually close the book and I'm like, okay, done. Thank you, that was great, or that was not great. And in this case, I was like, I think I might, go back and open the page one again. So this is it for Piranesi. Thank you, Susan Clarke. It was great experience. Another little book that I read, and it is called Hansik, Korean Food and Drinks. So this book was published by the Minister of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs of South Korea. So this is a very concise introduction to the Korean cuisine. My experience of Hansik, of Korean cuisine, is obviously through my father and my father's family, but you have to understand that my Korean family was intertwined with the Soviet and Russian culture, and so they adapted their cuisine, let's say, to the new realia. But I wanted to know more. I wanted to know where the history lies, let's say. And this book gives indeed a very short, brief introduction to a little bit of history, a little bit of contemporary traditions, and how they, happen to be. So I really enjoyed that. What I really enjoyed the most, I think, is that I never heard about the existence of so-called Korean temple food. But now I know, thanks to this book. For many years I was puzzled with this thought, why Koreans don't have more vegetarian and vegan cuisine, because, meat is usually, not just in Korea, but everywhere in the world, kind of scarce in the past. Nowadays, of course, we have whatever we want, but in the past I'm not sure that everybody had access to meat constantly, on a daily basis. So finally this book gave me an answer in terms of temple food. Of course, temple food means that Buddhists in their temples develop their menus and their special cuisine. Of course, not everybody is Buddhist in South Korea, or not everybody was Buddhist in the past. So I found it still very fascinating. I would love to learn more about this so-called temple cuisine. I already selected a couple of restaurants in Seoul where I could try it, where it is made by monks, by Buddhist monks. So yeah, I'm really excited about it. And since it is such a great format for this book, I think it is quite convenient, for example, to give it to your husband and tell him to read a couple of chapters so he can understand like what type of spirits, for example, they have, or what the colors, for example, of the food mean. So yeah, I think it is very convenient. I don't necessarily think you should buy it like in order to understand Korean cuisine. You can just easily skip it. But for those who maybe write a research, I think it's also like a really nice reference book. So yeah, this is it. Another book that I read last month was audiobook, and I'll put the cover here. It is called Pageboy by Elliot Page. So I'm sure you are familiar with this person, and he recently published his memoir, and and I found it on my Scribd account, like for free. It was included in my subscription. So yeah, I picked that one, and wow, that was very interesting. I don't have, let's say, access to many of trans people's stories. Whenever it's possible, I, for example, follow them on, I don't know, social media, and I'm really curious of how they live, how they experience, and what does it mean to be trans person. I'm trying to, let's say, educate myself through social media. However, I'm really glad that I read the book because it is like more extended version, with more details, with more, let's say, description of their experience, and what kind of, you know, mental issues and physical issues, but also social problems that they encounter during their lives. I also believe it's just simply very good memoir. However, if you expect something like stories about how he played with Leonardo DiCaprio in Inception, or I don't know, how was the experience like being a Hollywood superstar, I think this is not the book to pick. This is more of a self-exploration in his gender identity, sexual orientation, and like just simply understanding you, like trying to understand who you are. So shortly speaking, it is a good memoir. If you want to hear like other stories like you never heard before, if you want to get acquainted with the experience that you probably never experienced, go for it. It's a well-written, good, interesting book. Yeah, I enjoyed that, and the audio format was also very good for me. He recorded the audiobook with his voice, so it was very also nice to hear him. So yeah, that's it. The next book was the one that I was going to read in Russian. So this is the book that is called Squirrel, I believe, and it is written by Anatoli Kim. His works became already iconic when they were published in like 1980s, when it was so-called stagnant period of the Soviet Union, but also shortly after that, perestroika happens, and of course, that new contemporary literature was, you know, it was a great time for new literature of that generation. To be completely honest, I'm not that good at like Soviet literature and culture in the 80s and 90s. It was also quite interesting for me to learn what people were writing in that time. At the base of the story, we have 4 students who moved to Moscow and study fine art. And one of those students, which name we actually don't know, it's never mentioned in the book, but we know him under the name of Squirrel. And he has a very interesting ability to be transformed into Squirrel. And apart from being able to be transformed into Squirrel, he is also able to move from one body to another. So he can actually like become his friends or their acquaintances and etc. So it was very interesting idea. It was sometimes actually difficult to read because in one paragraph you could have one sentence, for example, where Squirrel is speaking, then the next sentence is, you know, their opponent is speaking, and so you're always like switching from one person to another depending on where Squirrel is, like on which body the Squirrel is. So it was interesting experience, let's say, very Soviet postmodern. Another thing about this book is that this is probably the most non-vegetarian book that I've ever read. There are a couple of descriptions of, let's say, very cruel behavior towards animals, as well as cruel behavior towards other human beings. So in that sense, of course, it was kind of like uncomfortable to read, but at the same time I understand why those scenes were there. It's kind of like Zootopia but with humans, you know. Like you have everybody in your world. You can be transformed into animal, or you can be transformed back. And I think he also kind of like develops this idea that everybody has the inner wild creature, and we should get rid of this creature, let's say, in order to be humane. So I think that is the main idea of this book. It was a very interesting experience, and now I'm more interested in his non-fictional work. I'll try to find it. It's hard, it's difficult to search for literature in my native language in Germany, so yeah, whenever I have a possibility, I try to buy these books. So yeah, that's it for my wrap-up video. These are the books that I've read in August. Now to the books that I'm going to read next month. Let's begin with the book that I still don't have. I just recently ordered it, and I ordered it because we selected it for our book club. And this book is going to be Cleopatra and Frankenstein by Coco Mellors. I've heard about this book a lot, of course. A lot of booktubers, I think, mentioned this book. So yeah, I'm really excited about it. I'm not sure what it is about. I assume it's kind of like a love story throughout the whole life of two characters, Cleo and Frank. And as far as I understand, she is an artist living in New York, if I'm not confused. And that obviously caught my attention. So yeah, I'm really excited about this book. I don't know what to expect, and because this book was not suggested by me, it was suggested by one of the other members of the book club. So yeah, I'm really excited. And now, next to the books that I selected to myself. Yeah, let's begin with the book that I already started reading just yesterday, and it's called Crying in Mart by Michelle Zauner. This is her memoir describing her experience after the death of her mother. It's about, I assume, about grief and about nostalgia, about memories that she had with her mother. So yeah, everything that I love, of course, in the book. Again, it's a memoir, and so far I read like 40 pages, and it's very easy and well written. I really enjoy it. So yeah, this is it for the September read. Again, it's part of my, let's say, preparation to a South Korean trip, because, you know, it's going to be like a long month for me to reflect, to enjoy, and to relearn Korean culture. So yeah, that's it for September. Again, I assume for the preparation to my Korean trip, I decided to read another memoir, which is In Order to Leave by Yeonmi Park. I think this author needs no introduction. I'm sure you've probably seen her TED Talk about her escape from North Korea. This is her story, but in book form. Yeah, I'm really glad. I just read like a couple of 4 pages, just to get a gist of it, and yeah, I know that I'm going to enjoy it, but not in the sense that it's like, you know, fun, entertaining literature. No, of course not. It's just I always feel joy when I learn about somebody else's experience, when I learn something new about the world we live in through their eyes, and this is my sort of fun. So yeah, I'm really excited about this book, and yeah, to the next one. Oh, the next one is actually based on the book Flawless that I showed you in the very beginning of this video. So when I mentioned Flawless in my TBR, one of the viewers actually left me a very sweet comment. So their name is Nico5890. And they recommended me Naomi Wolf's The Beauty Myth. According to Nico, it's a feminist classic, and we love feminist classic on this channel. And just as Flawless explores the notion of beauty in South Korea, I expect this book explores the beauty standards, let's say, and the perception of beauty in the broader sense in the whole world, and yeah, primarily in Western culture. So yeah, this is it for a little theory this month. Speaking of theory and philosophy, This month, I would love to read work of French philosopher Didier Eribon. It's called Returning to Reims. Didier Eribon was born in Reims to the family of workers. He then traveled to Paris to get his education in philosophy. He basically became this, stereotypical French intelligentsia, and then he travels back to his home, and this is this memoir that describes his experience of recounting his family, but also people, whom he knew from the very childhood. And what I expect from this book is basically his self-investigation into, self-identity and also the question of class and, what happens when you transition from one class to another. I heard about this book on the podcast, on the philosophical podcast. I linked down the episode that I've listened to, and on that episode, they mentioned that they actually had a class discussion about this book, and I was so envious that they had this opportunity to discuss philosophical book with the philosopher professor. It was fun to learn about this book, so I decided, heck yeah, I'm going to discuss this book by myself. And this is perhaps the last book that I'm going to read next month. Again, I'm not sure I'm going to finish all of them because there are a lot of things to do before we travel to South Korea. Still, we haven't planned everything. So some preparation needs to be done, but also, life happens and I have a lot of work now. So yeah, hopefully I will finish at least those books. But if I manage, I'll also make maybe some extra video not about books. I promise. I hope I will manage it. So yeah, and that's it for this video. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for joining me in my also self-exploration, because this is what books do, right? They kind of help us explore ourselves. So yeah, thank you very much, and I'll see you very, very soon. I hope you're doing great, and I wish you luck in whatever you're doing. Bye.